Good morning, afternoon, everybody. Thank you for that introduction. I'm a writer, I'm a community activist, I'm a relationship therapist, and because of that, I have, for better or for worse, a lot of experience with relationship, all kinds. And it's what's most exciting to me. So I'd like to know in this audience, how many of you think that people should voluntarily participate in any relationship that they're in? We're voluntarious here, right? It should be about 100%. Because voluntarism, or voluntarism as it's sometimes called, it believes that relations among people should be with mutual consent or not at all. How many people here would like to live in a community of like-minded people? Yeah, that's a dream we all have. It's like this utopian dream that we could all get along and we could have, do permaculture and eco-design and sustainability practices. And that's a dream that I have too and have participated in. Now, how many of you here would like to live as a hermit and have no relationship contact at all? Okay, you're in the right place because we're going to talk about relationship and in specific, how relationship can work. Because I've been called in on mediations and in intentional communities when they got in trouble. And I completely expect that when any kind of group gets together with common goals, that there's going to be human dynamics that come into conflict. Even in this anarchist community, I've observed relationships that went south, and I don't just mean like to Ecuador, I mean relationships that weren't working anymore, fights on Facebook posts, one YouTube message against another YouTube message. And you'd think, but wait, in this community of anarchists, we all have these very compatible goals. How could that happen? Well, it could happen because we were all raised in what I call a dominator system. The dominator system, some people call it the patriarchy. I prefer not to use that word because patriarchy tends to smear men, and it's a system that's held up by men and women, that's for sure. But it is the triumph of masculine values, such as rights, agency, autonomy, personhood, and self-preservation. And they're the so-called feminine values that are responsibilities, communion, relationship, community, and species preservation. So we need both to be healthy as individuals and as a society. So we were all raised in a dominator system that uses a strategy of divide and conquer. And one reason that I work so passionately in male-female relationships is because the war between the sexes is actually heating up. If you had told me 30 years ago when I started in all of this that we'd be at the point we are today, I would have been going, no, because, first wave feminism has given women their voice and the men's movement is starting. We're all going to learn how to get together. But in the dominator system, they are right now taking advantage of the war between the sexes and stoking this gender relations war. So I feel, I'm devoting my life to healing the wounds, healing the splits, because this divide and conquer strategy is working. Because it tells us that we must stay separate. That separation, it's a dog-eat-dog world, you can't trust anybody. But you know what? Most of the human beings I have met are essentially good people. They want the best for themselves and for others. They don't want to hurt anybody. But when we've come up through our families with the dominator system is based on a pyramid, a dominator hierarchy, with either a domineering father or a manipulative mother, and, all the family dynamics, spanking children, violence in the home, and the state, which is laws are based on rugged individualism. I'm not against, finding your personhood, but this thing that, you don't need other people, based on a religion that slaps us down with shame and guilt and says we can't do it on our own, we're just victims of this system and we need a higher power to pull us out. All of these add up to the idea of separation and isolation. And what I propose is that this is on purpose, to keep us separate, because whatever we want to call them, the state, the cabal, the elites, the ones at the top of the dominator pyramid, they're the ones who are manipulating the system. So very often when I'm in mediations or between whether it's couples or groups, I have to, I will say, hey, this isn't your fault, right? You just don't have the tools. You were raised, as we all were, with some rare exceptions, to have to fight for our own identity and our own personhood, because in the dog-eat-dog world, we could get trampled or eaten up. So it becomes what could be this unfolding of the human splendor, our creativity, and the love that we can generate, becomes a fight for survival. And the dominator system wants to keep us in survival mode so that we are reacting from fight or flight. So first, it's important to know that that was what we came up from. So anarchists who are coming together to work for greater goals, we all came up through the system, so we thought that when mom spanked us or shamed us or guilted us or blamed us, that was love. That was a show of love. Because when you're 1 year old, your caregivers you depend completely on them. And so we get this kind of confusion that shows that people care, but why doesn't it feel good? Why do when my mom shames me, I don't feel good. It's a way she can manipulate me, but for example, my parents used shame and blame, and I easily forgive them for that because they just didn't know. They didn't know any better. They thought that was how you raised a responsible child into a responsible adult. So to recognize that we inherently are lacking some skills is the first step. And I've been asked to speak about nonviolent communication, and I'm here to say that one of the best tools I've found in almost 40 years of working in relationship is nonviolent communication. Because we were raised in a violent society. The police stayed aside, that's coercion. The dominator system runs by force or the threat of force, and fear is its main weapon. Aside from the outward violence, we were raised in a suppressed, below, simmering, underneath the surface, emotionally violent environment. So many of us have had to work through self-esteem issues. Why? Because we were raised with, you always screw up, you're never going to amount to anything, there you go again, what are you, an idiot? That is violence. That is taking someone in their personhood and just slapping them down. This is the way we were raised. So, recognizing that we lack the skills, that we are recovering from coming up in a trauma-based mind control system, that's what I call it, based on trauma, because the controllers, the elites, the cabal, the state, however your understanding of them is, need to control the masses. And why would they have to be so hidden and controlling of us if they were all-powerful? Because we're actually very powerful, and there's more of us. But the dominator system is based on a pyramid. We're the peons on the bottom, and then the middle management is like the presidents and the prime ministers and the popes and the bankers and, you know, the people manipulating the financial system, the military, etc. They're middle management, but they have to answer to the ones at the top who are threatening them with force and using fear on them. And they have to do that because there's more of us down here, actually. You know, there's more of us. And if we wake up and heal our wounds and desert our posts at the bottom of the system, look at the architecture. What's going to happen? The ones at the bottom leave? What happens? It collapses. That whole pyramid will collapse. They're only holding us in place by force or the threat of force and fear. So, one of the things I appreciate about Anarchapulco so much is that the people who are looking for speakers for this conference recognize that unless we address our inner personal wounds, we're going to just stay in place. Or we're going to go out and throw a Molotov cocktail at a bank, for example, and, I mean, think about it. Who has the military, the police? So you get thrown in jail, and if you killed somebody in that act, well, not only do you have the karma, but you're probably going to prison. Or maybe they'll kill you. So we can be strategic in our thinking about how we want to bring this new system online, and we have to start with ourselves, because we won't be able to organize with others if we can't get along. And that's one thing that motivates me. I get called into mediations often. And the reason I respond, because, you know, like, really? Do I want to hear about everybody's problems and calling each other names? Well, I believe when organizations are coming together for what are usually very humane causes, that they should succeed. But we are our own saboteurs. I've sat across the table from corporate heads, from government heads, and they're formidable adversaries, I must say, because they hold all the materiel, the infrastructure, they run the money system. So, you know, respect to them, because, yeah, they've got the levers of control within their hands. But you know what has sunk many campaigns I've been involved in on different organizations? I was part of an environmentalist group, for example, for 10 years. More than that. It's been our internal conflicts. It's like what was said in that Pogo comic strip. We have met the enemy, and he is us. And that's the truth. We have internal sabotaging mechanisms that the dominator system very cleverly installed because it would keep us from organizing. Because there's more of us, remember? The architecture, it's just logical that we could make a a just, sustainable, compassionate society. We can do it. And we first have to know what's just and sustainable and compassionate within ourselves. And since we've all been wounded in a trauma-based mind control system, awakening stage are very much different therapies and practices and talks about how to heal yourself. Because we don't have a shot at making a new society if we aren't whole individuals ourselves. And we're all pretty beat up, right? I mean, everyone, if I had the time, we could go around and everyone could talk about their family background. And maybe you feel like, darn, I was just one of the few that got a dysfunctional family. I'll bet you 90% of us would say something like that. I mean, sure, love got across in most of our families probably, but there was emotional violence and in many cases physical violence in our families. And on a child, that is damaging. And we carry those wounds until we get to a place where, we pull that out, we can forgive our parents, forgive our teachers, and go, okay, that happened to me, and now I'm going to use that to make me a stronger individual. That's the hope we have. And it's not a pie-in-the-sky hope, because there's tools. There's so many therapies, that's why I work as a therapist, to heal this child that got hurt along the way. And we can do it. I mean, I'm not through my process, but you know what? I'm pretty much healed and pretty empowered. And I'm out in the world doing everything I can. My work is mainly with sexuality and with a tantric perspective, but as you've heard, I work in community and so forth, so that I am one person, and I know that I'm affecting many. So just looking at that exponentially, if each one of us, and you wouldn't be sitting here if you didn't think this was true or valuable, if each one of us has that kind of exponential effect, and there's more of us, you just do the math. We can make it. We could do this. I must say, however, that the clock is ticking, and we've got to get our shit together pretty darn quick. I don't know if any of you noticed, but the planet's on fire. This past year, it was like, well, the Amazon's on fire, California's on fire, Siberia's on fire, Australia's on fire. We better pull it together as soon as we can, because under duress, and everyone that, those controllers, so-called controllers or the dominators, know that you program people under psychological duress. They know that as we feel freaked out and unsafe, like, oh, I have to run out of my house because it might catch on fire, that we're apt to go down our spiral of evolution. We're more apt to go down into our childhood reactions, just out of protection. So this self-healing path is crucial so that we can pull out our best selves, the ones we were born with. We were born with this infinite potential. So, a tool that I feel needs to be in the toolbox of anarchists or any group that wants to do anything, and there were no hermits in the audience, so you all believe, or you're in your lives, you interact with other people. Nonviolent communication is a great tool. So what is it? Well, it was developed quite a few decades ago by Marshall Rosenberg, who observed what the violence, the emotional violence that went on in language that we thought was normal. And so he developed a 4-step process. It's not difficult, this process. However, it does take some learning, mainly because we aren't used to this. So what are the 4 steps? The 4 steps, the first one in any situation is to observe and state the facts. The second step is to express your feelings about what's happening. The third step is to express your needs, what you need that's not being met. And the fourth step is to express a request. And I'm going to give you some examples so that we can apply this. Let's look at the first one, which is observation. So back when journalism was a real thing, I mean, there still are journalists out there, but they're not on the mainstream. Journalists were told that in the first paragraph of a newspaper article, you need to do the 5 W's, like who, what, when, where, how, okay, and H. But it was strictly the facts, ma'am. You just state the facts. So this means that no judgment or evaluation. You could say, you could come in and say after you've been working all day, well, I see there's no dinner. I see you wasted your whole day. Or you could state the facts. You come in and go, oh, there's no food in the refrigerator. I feel hungry, and because I really need to eat. Could we please figure out dinner? And that's just the facts, how I feel, what my need is, and a request. Whereas, oh, there's no food, I see you wasted your day, you've already gone on the attack, on the offensive, and what's the person going to do? The one who was responsible for dinner, go on the defensive. And now you got to fight. Instead of having fun in the kitchen making dinner together, you're fighting. You don't appreciate me, you don't know what I go through, and you're always doing this, and you never pay attention to my needs. So, stating the facts. Now, to stay out of judgment is very important, because when we make an evaluation about something, that's based on values, evaluation. And our values are different. So it's, I can maybe be hungry for a couple hours, it's no big deal. But my partner turns into a bear when he's hungry in 5 minutes. So, values are different, and the way we are is different. Okay, the next thing, step 2, is the feeling. Whatever's triggering you. We've been raised to, first of all, not go into our hearts. We just keep it all up here. But, and I notice in my counseling, I actually will pass out a list of emotions, because most people have a very narrow band, especially in relationship, and the main one that we've been given is anger. But we have this whole menu of emotions that we can use. And so learning emotions is very important, to identify your own emotions. And this takes some work. And by the way, I'm giving a workshop right after this talk on how to practice NVC, because it takes practice. So we may say, I feel attacked. But wait a minute, attacked isn't an emotion. Attacked is a mental decision. Conversations where people are yelling, I feel so angry because my need for being able to count on somebody is not being met. Could you please show up on time? Stating a fact, stating my feelings, my need, and a request. And it keeps the ball in your court. You have a right to your feelings, and so does the other person. So the emotions, I mean, I talk a lot about this because we're so emotionally stunted. In fact, I have a workshop just on EQ, emotional intelligence. We, as humans, have this amazing capacity for emotions, and NVC lets us exercise them. The next step, 3, is the need. So you've got to state the need without morally judging it. And what are needs? Safety, belonging, peace, creativity, freedom, respect, physical touch, love, play, reciprocity, communication, rest, autonomy, acceptance. I mean, we have so many needs, and that's okay. We don't have to feel any which way about them. We have certain needs that we want to be met. And if the person that we're in conflict with can't meet them, maybe we need to look elsewhere to get our needs met. And we can use that with other people, like, I'm noticing that your eyes are downcast, and I'm wondering if you're feeling upset because your need for recognition is not being met. Is that so? So we can use it also with another person. And then when we make a request, it's great with NVC. You just state the request. You don't have to hint or beat around the bush or think that the person's going to mind read what your needs and requests are. You just state a request, and it's a request, so they can say no. And NVC creates enough safety that the person can say, no, actually, I can't meet you there. That gives you important information. Okay, then I need to go somewhere else to have my need met. This thing about NVC is that it allows us all to voluntarily consent to being in this exchange with another person. So it's a voluntarist strategy. And more importantly, it allows us to be able to communicate and to have compassion for one another and let love grow between us so that the world that we're creating is not a reaction to the brutal dominator system upbringing we were given, but it is actually creating a new world out of the love of our hearts, which we all have. So nonviolent communication is one way that we can express our best selves and find a way through, because I can tell you for sure, those guys at the top of the pyramid, they know how to get organized. They know how to collaborate. And if we don't get our shit together and be able to collaborate with one another, it's all nice words, and maybe we'll have some nice experiences, but most of us here really want a better world, and we want a just society, and we want our children to grow up in safety and with love. And it's my belief that nonviolent communication is one way that we can learn how to do that. I'll be teaching a workshop on that in the Free Your Family Camp stage right after this. So if you'd like to join me, please do. And I thank you very much for your attention.